At exactly 3:14 hours on March 21, 2026, day 22 of Operation Epic Fury, the strategic calm over the Indian Ocean was shattered by a missile trajectory no Western intelligence analyst had declared physically possible. Deep inside the reinforced mountain tunnels of Shahroud Missile Testing Range in Semnan Province, the launch crews of the IRGC Aerospace Force had spent 96 hours in complete electromagnetic silence, performing final calibrations on two weapons that were never supposed to exist in Iran's current arsenal. The Fattah-3 HGV, a hypersonic glide vehicle derivative of the already feared Fattah-2 ballistic missile, with a certified range of 4,200 kilometers, had received its terminal guidance coordinates. The target was not Tel Aviv. It was not Riyadh. It was Diego Garcia, the British Indian Ocean Territory Joint US-UK base, about 4,000 kilometers from the Iranian coast, the nerve center from which B-2 Spirit stealth bombers had been pounding Iran's military-industrial complex for 22 consecutive days. Tehran had finally decided to reach all the way across the ocean and cut the arm that had been destroying them, and they were about to do it with a weapon the CIA's January 2026 capability assessment said was at least 18 months from operational readiness. That assessment had just been proven catastrophically wrong. Simultaneously, 3,400 kilometers to the northwest, at 3:16 hours, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower CVN-69 Carrier Strike Group was holding a modified maritime patrol pattern in the northern Arabian Sea, 180 nautical miles south of the Strait of Hormuz. The ship's SPY-6AMDR radar array, the most advanced air and missile defense radar ever deployed at sea, was locked in continuous track mode, monitoring 42 active threat corridors across Iran, Iraq, and Yemen. Captain Hayden Briggs, commanding officer of the CSG, was in the Combat Information Center reviewing data from the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye that had been airborne for the past 6 hours, feeding multi-domain threat data directly into the Aegis Baseline 10 combat system. What happened in the next 19 minutes would force a complete rewrite of every U.S. Navy doctrine document on theater ballistic missile defense. Because Iran had just done the one thing every strategic planner at CENTCOM believed they couldn't do, turned the safest airfield in the entire theater into a kill zone. At 03:17 hours, did the Defense Support Program DSP satellite constellation, America's infrared launch detection network in geostationary orbit, registered dual launch events from Shahroud. The thermal bloom signatures were massive and simultaneous. The SBIRS ground station at Buckley Space Force Base in Colorado processed the event in under 4 seconds. Within 6 seconds, the data was pushed via AEHF satellite to 3 recipients simultaneously: CENTCOM Forward Headquarters in Qatar, the Eisenhower's Aegis CIC, and the Joint Air Defense Operations Center at Al Udeid Air Base. The preliminary trajectory solutions painted a chilling picture. The first missile was tracking southwest, toward Dimona, Israel. That was expected. Iran had been threatening the Negev Nuclear Research Center for 2 weeks. But the second missile's azimuth and energy profile were completely anomalous. It was not tracking northwest toward Israel, it was tracking almost due south, toward the Indian Ocean, toward Diego Garcia. Within 22 seconds of detection, CENTCOM issued an emergency flash priority message to the base over the JUIX network, the highest priority military communications channel. Immediate threat inbound, ballistic missile track, bearing 348 degrees. Impact prediction window 12 minutes, all personnel execute condition red. The 2 THAAD terminal high-altitude area defense batteries positioned at the eastern and western ends of Diego Garcia's runway had been in standby mode for 22 days. At 03:17 hours and 34 seconds, both launchers received automatic fire control orders from the THAAD Fire Control and Communication System, integrated with the base's AN/TPY-2 radar operating in terminal mode. The radar immediately achieved track on the incoming vehicle. What it measured stopped the operators cold. The object was not following a standard ballistic arc. It was gliding, maneuvering. The Fattah-3 HGV had separated from its booster stage at 1,100 kilometers altitude and was now descending at Mach 12.4 on a maneuvering glide path that changed its predicted impact point every 18 seconds, rendering pre-calculated intercept solutions nearly useless. What you are about to witness is not simulation. On March 21, 2026, Iran fired 2 of these weapons in real time. The U.S. military had exactly 11 minutes and 46 seconds to stop one from hitting the largest naval aviation support facility in the entire Indian Ocean theater. Do you believe the U.S. defensive system could make that intercept? Comment yes or no below. At exactly 3:19 hours, Captain Briggs received the updated track from CENTCOM. His Aegis CIC officer, Commander Sarah Ortiz, ran the engagement geometry calculations. The Eisenhower's SM-3 Block IIA interceptors, America's most advanced sea-based ballistic missile defense weapons, capable of engaging targets in exoatmosphere at ranges exceeding 2,500 kilometers, faced a fundamental problem. The Fattah-3's maneuvering descent profile was continuously generating track error bars that the kill vehicle's kinetic warhead could not reliably close on. Every time the fire control system generated a solution, the target shifted 7 to 11 kilometers laterally. The Diego Garcia THAAD batteries had a stronger probability, but only if the glide vehicle reduced its maneuverability in the terminal phase, a standard HGV characteristic as it bled velocity on final approach. The combined kill chain math gave the American defensive net a 64% single-shot probability of kill against this specific target. At 03:21 hours, THAAD Battery Alpha fired 3 interceptors in ripple launch at 4-second intervals. The enhanced kill vehicle streaked upward at Mach 8.2. Simultaneously, Commander Ortiz received new targeting data fed via Aegis THAAD data link fusion through the command and control BMD system, and the Eisenhower fired a single SM-3 Block IIA at 03:21 hours and 47 seconds, optimized for a boost-to-glide phase intercept at maximum altitude. At the same time, what the THAAD crews did not yet know was what was happening 2,100 kilometers to the northwest, in the shallow waters of the Gulf of Oman. An Iranian Ghadir midget submarine, one of 17 such vessels that had dispersed across Hormuz approach lanes over the past week, had just released a payload at 40 meters depth. The hydroacoustic signature was immediately acquired by the USS Florida SSGN, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine operating in silent track mode 45 nautical miles southeast. What the Florida's sonar operators heard was not a torpedo cavitation signature. It was the mechanical sequence of an underwater mine deployment system. In the 11 minutes that Diego Garcia's radar network was focused entirely on the inbound hypersonic vehicle, Iran was simultaneously executing a mine-laying operation against the carrier strike group's approach corridors. The P-8A Poseidon that would normally have been monitoring Ghadir movements had been recalled to the base runway 11 minutes earlier due to the inbound missile threat. Iran had engineered the hypersonic strike as a precision electromagnetic distraction, a 3-vector simultaneous attack, hypersonic missile to paralyze air defense radar coverage, submarine mine deployment to threaten the CSG approach lanes, and the Dimona strike in Israel to force IDF-3 batteries to prioritize the homeland over supporting CENTCOM operations. This was not desperation. This was operational architecture. At 03:22 hours and 14 seconds, the SM-3 Block IIA from the Eisenhower executed its mid-course intercept at 340 kilometers altitude above the Indian Ocean. The kill vehicle separated from its third-stage booster and activated its DACS, Divert and Attitude Control System, firing in 12 rapid microbursts, adjusting its intercept vector in real time using updated track data transmitted via Aegis uplink at 0.1 second intervals. The target was executing 4.2 G side load correction maneuvers, well within the Fattah-3's reported parameters. At 03:22 hours and 31 seconds, the kill vehicle impacted the Fattah-3 HGV at a closing velocity of Mach 21.7. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to 27 kilograms of TNT detonating in near vacuum. The target disintegrated at 340 kilometers over the Indian Ocean, while being the first ever operational Iranian 4,000-kilometer range hypersonic missile had been destroyed. But there was no time for relief. The USS Florida had just transmitted an emergency contact report. Submerged contact, probable mine laying activity, grid 21.4, north 60.8 east. Assess Iranian Ghadir class. Requesting immediate prosecution authority. Simultaneously, 1,900 kilometers to the northwest, the Fattah-3 aimed at Dimona re-entered Israeli airspace. Israeli Arrow 3 interceptor batteries positioned around the Negev Nuclear Research Center had been in continuous engagement posture since 03:18 hours. 3 Arrow 3 interceptors were fired. The first achieved a direct hit at 47 kilometers altitude. The Fattah-3's conventional high-explosive fragmentation warhead was destroyed above the atmosphere. Debris rained over the desert 90 kilometers east of Dimona. Iran had fired a ballistic missile at Israel's nuclear research center, the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center, with a warhead designed to create blast overpressure damage across 800 meters. That was not a warning shot. It was an attempted decapitation strike against Israel's nuclear deterrent, executed on the same day the U.S. dropped bunker buster bombs on Natanz. The escalation cycle had just entered territory no wargame scenario had fully modeled. At 3:31 hours, CENTCOM authorized immediate response strike package Foxtrot-7, 4 FA-18F, Super Hornets armed with AGM-158, CLR-ASM anti-ship missiles rolled off the Eisenhower's catapults and climbed to combat altitude, and their mission, kill the Ghadir before it completed its mine pattern across Diego Garcia's approach corridor. Simultaneously, Captain Briggs received flash authorization for the employment of 2 Tomahawk Block V land attack cruise missiles from the Eisenhower's Mark 41 VLS, targeting the Shahroud underground HGV assembly complex in Semnan province, the same facility that had just launched the first operational hypersonic strike on a U.S. military base in history. At 03:33 hours, 2 columns of gray smoke erupted from the Eisenhower's forward deck as the Tomahawks burned for 12 seconds and transitioned to turbofan cruise at 60 meters above the Arabian Sea, banking northwest toward Iran. The F/A-18F section reached engagement range at 03:44 hours. The USS Florida had maintained continuous passive track on the Ghadir, transmitting updated position data every 30 seconds via UHF subsurface communications buoy. At exactly 03:47 hours, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb released an Mk-54 Mod 1 lightweight torpedo from 400 meters altitude. The weapon hit the water at a 28-degree entry angle, activated its active sonar seeker, and acquired the Ghadir's hull within 2.2 seconds. The Iranian midget submarine executed an emergency full-power sprint to its 12-knot maximum, but at 40 meters depth, evasion options were catastrophically limited. The Mk-54 detonated on contact at 03:47 hours and 18 seconds. The Ghadir sank in 380 meters of water, its mine-laying pattern 40% complete. The partial minefield was charted in real time by the Florida's sonar and would be neutralized within 18 hours by mine countermeasure operations. The approach corridor had survived by minutes. At 04:02 hours, both Tomahawk Block V missiles entered Iranian airspace over Semnan province, threading a pre-surveyed radar gap between the Bavar 373 air defense system at Shahroud and the Raj short-range cluster near Damgan. Both missiles impacted the reinforced tunnel entrance of the Shahroud underground complex within 6 seconds of each other, detonating after penetrating 4.7 meters of reinforced concrete. The facility's ventilation and power infrastructure was destroyed. Satellite imagery 47 minutes later confirmed secondary explosions consistent with stored solid fuel propellant. At least 2 additional Fattah-3 vehicles were assessed destroyed in the secondary detonations. The arm that had reached 4,000 kilometers across the Indian Ocean had been severed at the shoulder. The strategic aftermath of this 47-minute engagement is a seismic shift that every military power on Earth is now studying in silence. Iran demonstrated a functional hypersonic glide vehicle with confirmed 4,000-kilometer combat range, a capability that exceeded every public Western assessment. The SM-3 Block IIA proved it could engage a maneuvering HGV, a capability the U.S. Navy had never publicly confirmed in operational conditions. But the detail that is being quietly analyzed in Beijing, Pyongyang, and Moscow is not the range of the missile. It is the integration, hypersonic missile, submarine mine operation, and nuclear site targeting strike, all synchronized within a 13-minute execution window, forcing the U.S. to simultaneously manage exoatmospheric interception, submerged threat prosecution, and offensive counter-battery fire across 3 separate geographic theaters. One of those 3 lanes came within 17 seconds and one sequential decision of succeeding. The Indian Ocean is no longer a sanctuary. The message Tehran delivered on day 22 of Operation Epic Fury is now echoing in fleet planning offices in Norfolk, Yokosuka, and Rota. No base is outside range, no approach corridor is permanently safe, and no intelligence assessment, however recent, can fully account for a regime willing to reveal its most classified weapons at the moment of existential pressure. The 4,000-kilometer hypersonic age has arrived in the Middle East, and the next time a cornered regime fires a weapon of this class, there may not be an SM-3 in the right position to solve the intercept geometry in time. What would your response be if Iran fires a second salvo tonight? Comment your analysis below. Subscribe now and activate notifications. The next classified file on Operation Epic Fury is being unlocked in 48 hours. You will not want to miss what happened at the Strait of Hormuz the morning after Diego Garcia was targeted.